What's up, fam? It's Pastor Mike with you. Listen, I've got a question. How much is your future worth? I mean, really, how much do you value your own particular destiny? And then that becomes a question of investing. How much is it worth investing in? You know, they say in life that you only get out of it what you put in it. So what if I were to tell you that I can help you get more money than you've ever gotten before, have more happiness than you've ever had before, and have more peace than you've ever had before? I want you to join me on my coaching platform called The Wisdom Blueprint. The Wisdom Blueprint is simply the what to, the how to, everything you need to know to have more joy, to have more peace, to have more money. Join me on The Wisdom Blueprint every month. It's a monthly subscription, no contracts necessary, cancel at any time, and get the insight, the intel you need that will take your life, your ministry, your business to the next level. I'm talking about The Wisdom Blueprint. Sign up today. Alrighty then. Welcome, one and all to another edition of Sundays with yours truly, Pastor Mike. What a joy and a pleasure to be with you on this Super Sunday, this Black History Sunday. As you already know, that this month has been set aside for the recognition of African American contribution. And before I get started, I got to remind you, as I feel compelled to do every time I hear the word black, when in reference to people of color or African descent, and I know some may disagree, but I'm of the impression that a people are identified by three things. Number one being their culture, number two being their history, number three being their geography. In other words, let me say that again before I move on. That they're identified by their history, their culture, and their geography. That means, for instance, if you go to China, you're going to meet Chinese people. If you go to Japan, you're going to meet Japanese people. If you go to Russia, you're going to meet Russians. If you should go to Argentina, you're going to meet Argentinians. Or you get what I'm saying? If you go to Australia, you're going to meet Australians. So tell me, where on planet Earth can you go that is to a place that's called black? There's no Blackstonia. There's no Blackafstan or Blackganistan or Blackstovia or any of those such places. Okay, so when it refers to a group of people, I'm always compelled to remind you that we, the people that have descended and ascended from the continent of Africa, are of African descent. It's that simple. Now, it gets a bit controversial depending on the crowd that you're speaking to. But the fact remains that if you come from a land, then you have the name of that land in your ethnic identity, okay? If you're from Russia, you're going to be Russian. There's no two ways about it. You're not called. I guess I could also say that for white people because whites. There's no place called Whitestonia either. But what I really wanted to do as we looked into this Black History time, this moment in our own American history, our own recognition of Blacks or African diaspora in our national calendar, then I thought it might be very, very advantageous to look at the whole picture, not just the last 400 or 500 years of history. I've heard it said, I've been told by an individual themselves that whenever they were in school as a youngster, they would see all of these wonderful stories and folklores of great Caucasian men who discovered America, who traversed the wilds of these virgin lands here in America against people like Daniel Boone and Johnson. I can't even think of his name right now. But there's so many different Paul Bunyans and all of the great names that we've learned about as it relates to the founding of these United States. And so my friend was like, when I was a kid, I would ask, where are we in history? As African Americans or Africans or Black at that time, where are we in history? And he was informed by his own instructor, his own teacher, no less, that you don't have a history. Tragically, I know they didn't say that I don't think they said it out of animosity, but certainly out of ignorance, because he told the young man that you do not have a history, that you just I guess somehow just magically appeared on the landscape of this world, and as a result, that was you're identifying as a people who should be um, brought into slavery and captivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here we go. Now, the only thing of it is that it has become a accepted norm within the cultures of all of the world, not just here in America, but that colonialistic ideology and superiority complex or ideology has permeated all of the Americas, even into foreign lands. And so you have similar occurrences throughout history of oppression and suppression of Africans all around the world. I mean, not only here in America, but there, even in Africa itself, and several parts of the world, wherever they would be found, they were brought into captivity. You got Jamaica, you got all of the Caribbean islands, all of North Africa, all of along the Nile River. Which you would do well if you would just take a moment and just go back to Africa and just do kind of a tour. It may take some while. Maybe it'll take several visits to traverse from Ethiopia all up and down up the Nile, basically all the way up to Egypt, and just get a panoramic view of the history of society as we know it. And you'll be a little bit surprised, perhaps many of you, even as I was, to find out how that Africans are not just jungle people. They're not wild savages that exist in the jungles of Africa, but we actually have a rich history. A rich history of knowledge, insight, science, mathematics, reading, writing. Do you not know that Africans were the first to learn and develop what we now call reading? We were the first to do it. Check the histories through some of the unknown history that has not been celebrated in these United States, but they're nonetheless true, because just because you haven't heard about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And because and then this is another thing you have to consider, that all you know is all you know. And so you can't be accountable for the things that you never knew, that you don't know. And consequently, we build our world around a myopic ideology, an idea that this is truth. and there is nothing else but what's inside this circumference of ideas and concepts. This is our world. Well, there's so much more world outside of our small myopic understanding. And if we don't appreciate that, then there are those who would gladly take advantage of your ignorance of that to bring you into subjugation, and many cases by legal means, as to provide proof that you are, even by God's standard, ordained and authorized to be brought into captivity, whether it's slavery, as we've known it here in America, or any other form of captivity that limits your freedom and liberty that other people themselves enjoy. Okay? The idea is this, that if God, think about this now, it's going to require you to kind of think with me. If God wanted us to be slaves, why would he even himself grant us the ability to choose? If his idea was slaves and those that would just serve him and serve his pleasure and serve his agendas, why would he give us the ability to choose? Why? Because that's what true freedom is. True freedom, if you want to give someone true freedom, it comes at a price. It comes with certain risks, because now that you've given them the power to choose, you run the risk of them choosing not to serve you, if that's what your agenda was. When you grant freedom, freedom is it's a almost two-edged sword, because even with God, think about this now. Think about this for a moment. In the beginning, when God created man, he created him with the same propensities as God himself. So as to almost think that God created man so that he can almost potentially rival God himself. Now that's been tried and failed. You know, you don't read of these things in the King James Bible. So if you're a King James fan, you're not going to find these instances. But there are times in theological history, and I'm not just talking about theology that starts from Genesis, or starts from when Jesus is born, or even Israel. I'm talking about ancient history. But the truth of the matter is this, that when anyone wants to control you, the way that they control you is by controlling what you hear and what you see. What you hear and what you see, because these are the two methods by which we learn and grow. We learn by what we hear, we learn by what we see. By and large, if I lose my sight and I retain my hearing, I can still learn potentially. And vice versa. If I lose my hearing but I gain my sight, there's a thing called sign language. I don't know what I'm doing, but you get the point. You can still learn. So if one wants to hold you in captivity, the way that they hold you in captivity is to control what you hear and control what you see. Now, this has been done on a high level of efficiency, actually, for generations, to control what we see, to control what we hear. Now, again, I'm not teaching this for the purpose of us, getting angry or getting vengeful and, do some silliness like they did on January 6th to raid the Capitol in an effort to take the country back. That's foolish. But I am saying it because knowledge is freedom. The truth will make you free. Even Romans, the first chapter, talks about how God's anger is against them that know the truth but doesn't tell the truth. The anger of God, read it for yourself, Romans, the first chapter. The anger of God is revealed against them that holds the truth in unrighteousness. In other words, they control what you hear and what you see, because they understand that if you begin to continue to learn and increase in understanding, then the potential for you to resist being controlled will heighten itself. And so that's why for centuries and for generations, slaves were not allowed to learn. They weren't allowed to read. They weren't allowed to study. Because if they were to do that, which is interesting, because if you thought they were animals, they're only three fifths human, then what would reading and writing do for them if they're not fully human? But that's another argument. So, but it does go on to underscore the idea that God says that my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And so it underscores the idea of how important it is for us to protect ourselves by educating ourselves. And then when you do that, you have to almost monitor or question, uh, the source from whence you get that information. What's their angle? What's their axe to grind? What are they trying? What agenda are they trying to promulgate in the earth before you can really accept that knowledge? That's why the Bible talks about the Bereans in Acts, how they were more noble because they received the word of God with gladness, with happiness. But they went back to study to see if, in fact, what they were told was true. And so we must do the same thing. We must not just buy into a narrative, because just because it's called history doesn't mean that it is their story. You get what I said there? That history is not necessarily their story. In history, the history is written by the victors, not the victims. So if you're going to get a true assessment of history, you must learn from not only the victors themselves, but the victim themselves as well. Because no one is going to, how they say there's three stories. There's their side, and it's the other side, and then there's the truth. So whenever you hear one side without the other, the Bible even says that you're not wise. Don't make a decision based on one-sided information. Always try to get both sides. Try to get as much intel from both sides, and somewhere between those two extremes is the truth. Okay? Okay, so again, that's why I thought it all month long. We're going to deep dive into perhaps some unknown history that everyone knows about Martin Luther King, everyone knows about Malcolm X, etc. But we'll deal with some maybe more or less popular ideas when it comes to the African diaspora. And so that is what we want to do throughout the month of February, Black History Month, because again, as the series indicates, that we have to get to love ourselves. This is really the end game. How do you get to the place where you can love yourself? And why is it necessary to encourage you to do so? Why is it necessary to encourage you to learn to love yourself? Why? Because by and large, you've been systematically indoctrinated to a place where you can't love yourself. And so when we look at Matthew's Gospel, 22nd chapter, when he says the greatest commandment is not just to love God. He says the greatest commandment is to love God, but the second is like unto the first. So you've got a dual master command that you cannot please God fully by observing just one. You have to observe both. So he says in the 22nd chapter of Matthew's Gospel, he says there are two things you must understand and you must give into. He says again that the greatest commandment is that you love God and that you love your neighbor as yourself, because the second is as important and as significant as the first. So it seems to suggest that you can't fully love God until you learn to love your neighbor as yourself. But you can't love your neighbor until you learn to love yourself. You see how we've gotten the kind of like the cart before the horse, because we want to try to love everybody and yet not love ourselves. because we've been taught that we're under a curse, that God doesn't love us, and that God's against us. And as such, you should be content with just being alive. And whether it's in the cotton fields or whatever else work that you may have to do, you should be happy for that because God doesn't love you. Well, how does it then translate to the point where we can love our neighbors if we've been taught not to love ourselves? It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You can't love your neighbors until you learn to love yourself. And I tend to use this example all the time because I think it clearly demonstrates this point. Whenever my wife and we often are flying around the country or to some other part of the globe, and it never fails. Before every flight, we get a debriefing of sorts. We get a briefing, a brief presentation from the flight attendant. And what in that flight, that pre-briefing or pre-flight briefing, what they do is tell us that the different locations of exits, the restrooms, and things of that nature. How to, if in the event we somehow crash land on water, how to exit, keeping in mind that the closest exit may be behind you. But one of the most important things that they say is that if at any point we lose cabin pressure, the masks will fall from above your head. The thing they tell us to do, no matter whether it's a foreign flight or a domestic flight, no matter what it is, they all say the very same thing, and that is this: put the mask, when it falls from the overhead cabin, when it falls down, put the mask on yourself first, not your loved ones, not your children, yourself. Now that's very interesting because it's suggesting that you look after yourself first before you can properly look after anyone else. That's a kingdom principle. He said, because even in the air, if the altitude or we lose pressure in the plane and the mask fall, if you try to put that mask on your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, your kids, whatever, before yourself, what happens is because of the loss of oxygen, you will have what is called vertigo. You won't know you're up from down. You'll be disoriented. You won't even know who your children really are because you'll be so disoriented. So in order to prevent that from happening, the best thing to do is to put that mask on yourself first. And then you'll be able to recognize your own children and care for them. Second, in that same likeness, when the Bible says to love your neighbors as yourself, it's not saying love your neighbors first. It's saying love your neighbors as you love, or in accordance with how you love yourself. Because if you can't love yourself, you cannot love anyone else, not properly. Okay? Because you don't have a point of view. You don't have a perspective on what true love is until you learn to love yourself. Flaws and glory and all. Flaws, scars, everything else that comes with who you are. We have to get to the place where we are content to love us no matter how much we would prefer smaller ears, smaller nose, whatever, a darker tone, lighter tone. It doesn't matter. We have to learn how to love who we are because you're made the way that you are to serve the purpose for which you're called. Okay? Let me say that again. You are made the way that you're made to serve the purpose for which you are called. And every one of us is called. Every one of us is called. The only reason you are even in this earth is because God called you to the earth. No matter how you got here, you might have been through a mistake. Your parents may have said, "Oh, you were the oops baby." It doesn't matter because what may have been a mistake on their part was purposeful and divine on God's part. That's why you are here no matter what happened. I'm not supposed to, I've heard the testimony. My doctor told me I could never bear a child, and boom, here it goes. 9 months later, here comes a child. Why? Because it doesn't matter what the doctor says. When the doctor says no and God says yes, guess who's going to win? God's going to win it every time. Every time it's going to happen in God's favor. So again, when we talk about this theme, love yourself. This is not selfish. This is not self-centered. It's actually Christ-centered. It's actually theocentric. It's God's logic. Okay? You can't properly love others until you learn to love yourself. Everything else after that, it's experimental. Okay? It's almost fictional. You can't love somebody until you love. It's hypocritical to try to love somebody else when you first can't love yourself. All right, and that's not new. I know sometimes Christians, we get a little we get a little skittish when we hear stuff like this because we think it's new age. It's not new age, it's actually old age. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Trust me, there's nothing you're going to come up with that hasn't already been done. Anything we're doing today, the clothes we wear are throwbacks. They're reference to older clothes that we used to wear. It may have a new little spin here and there, but it's the same. The shoe hasn't been reinvented. The shoes still go on our feet. It's been doing that for generations. Okay, so there's nothing new under the sun. You cannot come up with anything new. I was watching just last night. I was watching the All-Star game, and during the All-Star weekend, what they have is a one event they call the dunk contest. So the dunking contest is basically that. 4 or 5 at that time, I think it was 4 or 5 that were competing for the trophy for the best dunk. Well, I was watching it for a few minutes, and I found myself getting disinterested because I've seen all of the dunks before. I've seen the reverse slam dunk. I've seen the tomahawk. I've seen the windmill dunk, and all of the. I've seen it because I've been watching basketball ever since the 70s. And when Michael Jordan famously dunked from the free throw line, and literally this is how he got his name Air Jordan, because he literally glide all the way from the key to dunk to the rim and dunk the ball. So I've seen it all. There's nothing new under the sun. It's not to say it's not entertaining, but it's hard to impress me now because I've seen the great Michael Jordan. I've seen the great Kobe Bryant. I've seen the great Larry. Well, Larry Bird is not known for dunking, but he's a killer shooter. I've seen Magic Johnson. I've seen Dr. J. Julius Irving in The Incredible Dr. Julius Irving. I've seen the Hook. What's his name? Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. No one to this very day can master the hook shot like. So I've seen it all. I've seen it all. So all I'm saying is, in this life, there is nothing new. You cannot come up with anything new that has not already been done. Everything is a redo. Trust me. So I said all that to set up this idea so that you might appreciate that it doesn't matter what ethnicity you may be, whether you're Jamaican, Haitian, African. They're all African, by the way, but by the distinction, Jamaican, Trinidadian, Bahamian, whatever else, all the other, even Puerto Rican, yes, Puerto Rican, Mexican, all of that, Indian, they're all of the diaspora. But I met I see Dr. Cora Powell. I see Dr. Cora. She's on, and so we were at a meeting of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, and it was a very interesting meeting. But I met a very interesting individual that I was not aware of. I've not heard of, and this was the newly crowned first Haitian American queen. She was just coronated in Nigeria, Africa. I think it was Lagos, and she had just been coronated queen. So I thought it was very interesting, which got me interested in the plight of Haitian people, because by and large, they are some of the ones who are still suffering under the idea that they are a cursed people. And I gotta say this real quickly, and I cannot by any means solve all of the issues that surrounds Haiti and Black America or African Americans in this short broadcast. That would take a university study course to do that. And so I'm just doing a brief flyover. So I'm not going to cover every nuance. But one of the things that I wanted to specifically address was the idea that Haiti is somehow given over to witchcraft, and as such, that's why their country goes through so many turmoil and so much traumatic events happens there in Haiti because they gave their country over to Satan. Again, you can only know what you've been told, and that's why you have to monitor the one who tells you. But let me just say this. Now, as of course, I'm not calling him out as the only one, but he certainly promoted this whole concept of Haiti being under some sort of demonic curse. Uh, Pat Robinson, in his CBN broadcast, offered his own explanation on why Haiti goes through so many, tumultuous issues in their country. One of which being the latest, the earthquake there in Haiti. So it says here, something happened a long time ago in Haiti, and people might not want to talk about it, he said, but they were under the heel of the French, which is true, and they got together and swore a pact to the devil. And they said, "We will serve you, devil, if you'll get us free from the French." And it's a true story. That's what they're saying. Pat Robertson, allegedly, I'll just put that in there for legal reasons. Allegedly, Pat Robinson spoke on this, said it's a true story. And he said, okay, the devil said it's okay, it's a deal. So they said, allegedly, Pat Robinson says, ever since that time, they've been under a curse by one thing after another. Now, again, it seems to me that you can tell evangelicals just about anything when it comes to spiritual matters, and people will believe it because they don't do their own homework. They just assume that just because the man wears a collar or a beanie on his head, that he's telling the truth every time, and he's accurate in his speeches or his sermons. But let me just offer another bit of perspective to you. Number one, if you believe that, then you have to also believe that the Jewish people are under a curse as well, because you remember in this same book of Matthew, I believe it was the 22nd chapter later on, where he's talking, Pharaoh is being forced to crucify an innocent man because the Jews did not like Jesus, did not like the fact that he would teach some sort of erroneous or heathenistic or heretic gospel about him being close to God. So the Jews didn't like him, so they wanted him executed. So he's brought before Pilate. Pilate, you know the story. Every Christmas we go over it. But in short, Pilate didn't want to do it. So he's like, he's done nothing wrong. Why do you want me to crucify this innocent man? I find no fault in him. But they said, crucify him. So Pilate, one last effort, he says, as is our custom, about this time of the year, we always release a prisoner. Why don't I release to you either Christ, this Jesus fella, or release to you Barabbas? You've got Barabbas or Jesus. Which would you prefer me to release? Assuming that they would say release Jesus because he's innocent. Barabbas was a known convicted criminal. But this was Pilate's way of trying to get out of crucifying Christ in a legalistic way. That way they won't see him as being weak or soft. So he says, choose between Jesus and Barabbas. Barabbas is the one convicted. Remember, Jesus is innocent. But they said, give us Jesus. They said, give us Barabbas, crucify Jesus. Give us Barabbas, the convicted criminal, let him go, but crucify the innocent man, Jesus, the Christ, crucify him. So when Pilate realized, I can't persuade them against this, I'm washing my hand of this. His blood will not be on my hand. Here's my point. The Jews then said, let his blood be on our heads, and not only our heads, but be on our children's head as well. So the guilt, the judgment, the condemnation of killing an innocent man, they ask, kill him, and we'll deal with the consequences. Let that judgment be on us. Let that sin be on us. Let that guilt be on us. Let that blood be on our heads and on our children. So if anyone's under a curse, they literally ask for it, just in the same way Pat Robinson here allegedly says that Haiti asked for Satan's help to rid themselves of the French people. And so that's why they have hurricanes. That's why they have earthquakes, because they gave and sold their country out to Satan. Well, the same thing could be said about the Jews if we're going to use that sort of analogy, because they literally asked for the blood of Jesus to be on their heads and on their children's head. So that means if this Jesus is a legitimate person, then that would mean that his death and judgment and guilt should rest squarely on not even the Roman people, but on the Jews, because they asked for it. So again, you just have to take with a grain of salt what you're listening to. Go back and study for yourself to make sure that what you're hearing is accurate or makes sense. In many cases, you're going to find it doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make sense at all. Because again, let me share with you real quickly, then I got to go. So it says here that Haiti won its independence from France in 1804, and it was almost immediately made a pariah state by world powers, including by the U.S. It was an independent, black-led, let me say that again, Haiti was an independent, black-led, and of course we excuse him on the word black, but again, Haiti was an independent, black-led nation created by slaves who had cast aside their chains and fought their oppressors for their freedom during a time when white-led nations were enforcing brutal racist systems of exploitation around the world. And you don't have to tell us, because we witnessed it right here in America. But here in 1804, Haiti fought against their oppressors and literally routed them. Now, here's the issue. And there's so much more to share, but I don't have time to do it today. I just advise you to do it, because, again, even our own black brothers and sisters would look upon Haiti as some sort of degenerate people who've been denied by God and cursed by God. But you've been taught to believe that. If you remember, there was a Bible by the name of the Schofield Bible not too long ago. I had a copy myself. It described that blacks are under the curse of Ham. And if you remember, Ham being one of the sons of Noah. So supposedly, blacks are a cursed race of people because God cursed Ham. Well, again, if you didn't take the time to go and study that for yourself, you would not have discovered, or if you took the time to discover and study it for yourself, you would have discovered that there was no such thing as the curse of Ham. There was no such thing as Ham being under a particular curse of any sort. And even in the biblical account, the curse was pronounced upon Canaan, okay, not upon Ham himself, okay. And if indeed Ham, being black, being considered ruddy, all of them had to be black or African, but him in particular, if that were the case, then you would, if you know transliteration, the word Ham translate into the word Mizraim. Mizraim is a translation of the word Ham, but it doesn't stop there. The translation of Mizraim means Egypt. So you've got a whole nation of people named after Ham. Well, let's look at Egypt's history. Throughout the eon, I'm talking about thousands of years. But did you not know by the time that Moses shows up in biblical writings to confront Pharaoh and asking and demand that he let God's people go, do you not know they were in their like 13th dynasty? That the whole account of Moses is a relatively new and recent account when you compare it to the long history that the Egyptian people already possess, since they were in their 13th dynasty by the time Moses even shows up. But again, you won't know that unless you study for yourself. Okay? So the whole concept of Egypt, if they were a cursed people, guess what? They were so cursed, it must have been cursed with knowledge and wisdom and insight, because these are the same people who've created monuments that to this very day, with all the modern technology and advancement we've had in recent years, we still cannot understand how the Egyptian people were able to build the way they built things without having the modern equipment that we have today. It still blows the mind. It boggles the mind. These are supposed to be accursed people, but they have this insight. They have this knowledge. You remember now, this whole concept of reading and writing did not start in Scotland, did not start in England, did not start in Scandinavia. It started in Egypt, and it perused through North Africa into Portugal through various tribes of people. But the point I'm making is that we invented it. But just like everything else we've invented, someone else comes along, kills the people who innovated, and takes it for themselves. That's just the way that it is. We've seen this happen over and over, time and time again. Again, I'm not saying this to make you angry at white people or Caucasian people. I'm simply telling you the truth. And again, you don't have to believe even me. You don't have to believe me. Check it out for yourself. But don't be the blind leaders of the blind, okay? Because you both fall in a ditch, okay? And again, let me just say this. Right here in our own state of Florida, our own governor seems to be adamantly opposed to the idea of teaching Black history, specifically the critical race theory or the 1619 Project, anything that exposes America's involvement in the intentional oppression, suppression, and discrimination of Africans in America. It's been systematic, but again, they don't want that to get out, because they understand, or at least think, that once you find out how great a people you really are, then you won't stand for all of the injustices that you've encountered for generations. I'm just saying. So again, I wanted to honor Haiti on today's broadcast, just to let them know. And let me just say this also. If you check out the history, they talk about Haiti's been given over to voodoo and things of that nature. But remember this: voodoo is kind of a hodgepodge of spiritual ideas, folklore. What's the word for folklore, and old wives' tales, suspicion. But guess what? Another component of that, check the history, is it's religious ideology. So you can't have voodoo without religion. And check the history again. Check for yourself. You can't have voodoo without some sort of religious involvement, and by and large, it's a conglomerate or a mosh part or a hodgepodge of of skepticism, superstition, folklore, um, wives' tale, and religious ideology, all meshed together in one thing, and they call it voodoo. Check check the history. You don't know, and I'm going to be finished with this. This will blow your mind. You cannot even become a Satanist priest without the ordination of a priest, a Christian priest. You can't even become you can't even really be a true full-throated, blooded Satanist until check out. I've done some research on Satanism and the occult, so I've uncovered this information. You can do the same. You don't have to take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. All I'm saying is that you've been systematically, in the words of Malcolm X, you've been led astray, run amok, bamboozled to believe that you're less than what you truly are. Okay? And that's all I'm going to say about that. But I will say this. I want you to consider, I had some slide here with some books and I want you to check out, but I don't seem to see it here. So we'll try and get it in maybe next broadcast. But suffice it to say, if the Bible says, and this is again the issue of loving yourself, if it says, if God's command for us is to love, then if love is a commandment, then it's got nothing to do with feelings. In other words, you don't have to feel love. As a matter of fact, it may not even be love that you're feeling when you say my heart is, my heart rate goes up, my palm gets sweaty every time I see her, every time I hear his name, my heart just swoons, my pressure goes up, my palms get, that might be a heart attack. That might not even be love. If you're waiting on that kind of feeling, okay? That might not be love at all. That might be a heart attack or a stroke. You might want to get looked in. You might want to look into that. Love is actually a decision because, again, if his commandment is for us to love, then feelings got nothing to do with it. You have to decide to love. Love is a decision based on and I think they're good descript. What the Bible calls love is a very good descript. Love is patient. Love is kind. Doesn't keep a record of wrong. Doesn't vaunt itself. It's not proud. It's not arrogant. And I mean, if you want to keep it basic, he says, love your neighbor. If you love yourself, you wouldn't do any harm to yourself. You wouldn't say anything bad about yourself. So don't do it about anybody else. Don't say anything bad. Don't do anything bad against anyone else. And you will literally be walking in love. You see how that works? It's just that simple. All right, I'm done with this. Check out this commercial, all right? What's up, fam? It's Pastor Mike with you. Listen, I've got a question. How much is your future worth? I mean, really, how much do you value your own particular destiny? And then that becomes a question of investing. How much is it worth investing in? They say in life that you only get out of it what you put in it. So what if I were to tell you that I can help you get more money than you've ever gotten before, have more happiness than you've ever had before, and have more peace than you've ever had before? I want you to join me on my coaching platform called The Wisdom Blueprint. The Wisdom Blueprint is simply the what to, the how to, everything you need to know to have more joy, to have more peace, to have more money. Join me on The Wisdom Blueprint every month. It's a monthly subscription, no contracts necessary, cancel at any time, and get the insight, the intel you need that will take your life, your ministry, your business to the next level. I'm talking about The Wisdom Blueprint. Sign up today. Make sure that you also check out my new offering. This is coming up in the next month of March. Woo! I'm super excited about this. My new book, it's coming out. It's coming. It's been it's been about 12 years in the making. As a matter of fact, what a coincidence. 12 things that ruins relationship. A guide to knowing when it's safe to love. If you miss our webinar my wife and I did, we've been married over 35 years now, and we did a seminar called Keeping It Hot. Keeping It Hot. Honest, open, and transparent. If you missed that, you need to go to my wife's website at FrancineNormanMinistries.org. Get your copy of that. That is an eye opener. But a great companion to that is the 12 Things That Ruin Relationship, a guide to knowing when it's safe to love, because this is going to help you avoid some of the pitfalls of relationships, some of the misconceptions that we were taught as children. Do you not know most of our relationship principles we've learned from fairy tales, such as Snow White, Cinderella, Rapunzel, Romeo and Juliet? That's by and large the way we equate love. And so we think that there's a Prince Charming for us. For every woman, every girl gets a Prince Charming. Every Prince Charming gets a Rapunzel or a Cinderella and all of this. And these are fairy tales. These are folklore. It's not how life works. They've been used as forms of entertainment, but we've taken them and applied them to our culture to make us believe that there's a Prince Charming out there for everyone when it's mathematically impossible. And even then, you have to weigh it against who it is you actually meet. You don't really meet for the first time. You don't meet the real person. That person doesn't show up till about maybe 3 or 4 dates or encounters later. That's why you should never sleep with anybody on the first date, because then you'll start creating a bond with somebody that you don't even know. But that's another thing. I have to go. I'm done for the day. But I want you to get that book. When it comes out, we'll let you know. But if you're interested in it, you can also write me or email me at MichaelNormanMinistries. That's right. Let me just. All of graphics are. Let me see. Oh, there you go. And then you can go to MichaelNormanMinistries.com. Sign up and let me know you want to advance notice of the book when it's released. 12 Things That Ruins Relationship. While you're there, you can join the Wisdom Blueprint. People are from all over the world actually signing on for this growth um, course that helps you identify yourself and others, and so that you can live a more effective life. I'm telling you, it's a major breakthrough for so many all around the world. So again, go to Michael Norman Ministries, get your copy of it, and be blessed. I know it'll be a blessing to you. Thank you for all of you who continue to support the ministry. Ministry doesn't happen without money. It's not a coincidence that they both start with M, because they need one another. Ministry does not work without money. Amen. And for money to have a purpose, it has to have a mission. So money has to have a mission, and a ministry has to have a mission. But when you marry the two together, they get the work done. So I want to thank you for your continued prayerful and financial support of this ministry. And if you so desire, you can do so 3 ways. You can do it through Cash App, PayPal, or you can make your checks payable to Michael Norman Ministries, P.O. Box 850, Apopka, Florida, 32704. That's P.O. Box 850, Apopka, Florida. And of course, all of your gifts are tax deductible. And I'm praying that God will give it back to you, pressed down, shaking together, running over, and cause men to give into your bosom. Also, got to let you know, we've got a new location and a new time. Sundays at 9 a.m. Sundays at 9 a.m. Sundays at 9 a.m. at the Movement Church, 2160 North Hiawassee Road, right here in Orlando. We want you to come and be a part of the experience there at the Movement Church. You will be blessed, I promise you, in so great a measure that I pray that you'll be a blessing everywhere that you go. All right. So that being said, again, I want to thank you guys again. Would you do me one more solid before I leave? That is this: become an electronic evangelist. If this has blessed you, this broadcast, share with as many of your friends, 5, 10, 20, all of them. Just share it with them, and it helps with the algorithms, because I'm trying to reach as many people as I possibly can, but I cannot do it without your help. Okay. So you can help me by doing that for me. Share with at least 5 to 10 of your friends, and that will help me to expand my reach right here on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you are watching this stream cast. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your continued financial, prayerful, and financial support. It is what helps to make it happen. I want to bless you and thank you for it. Okay, join us again on Wednesday for Wednesday's Word. We're going deeper into the book of Acts. See you then. All right? All right. Look forward to it. Have a great rest of the afternoon.